Hi, how you doing? Justin here. Welcome to lesson 8 of the Blues Rhythm Guitar series. And in this lesson today, we're going to be talking about a thing I call mini grips, which are basically very small 2 or 3 note chords, which are really useful when you don't want to be playing too much, especially if you're playing with a piano player or another guitar player that plays lots of notes. Sometimes it's better just to keep things really simple, outline the chord changes with as fewer notes as possible, which is exactly what this little thing's about. So let's get to a close-up and check out how to play them. So we're starting off today here with a B-flat 7 chord. Now this is our 6-string root where we'd normally play all 6 strings of our B-flat 7. But sometimes that can be a bit too much if you're going to go... And sometimes it's cooler to have something a little smaller. So if we're going to cut this chord down a bit, we need to figure out what notes we're going to keep. Now, probably the most important note in any chord is the 3rd, because that's the one that tells us whether it's major or minor. Hopefully you've kind of figured that out, that the difference between B-flat major and B-flat minor is just one note, and it's this one. Major and minor. So, of course, that one's going to be a pretty important one. And the other one that's really important is, of course, the flat 7. Hopefully you as well remember that if we've got here a B-flat, regular B-flat major chord, and we lift off our little finger, we get our flat 7 there. This is the note that's kind of appeared, if you like, when we lifted off our little finger. So you can see we can kind of represent the important chord tones, which is the flat 7 and the major 3rd. And that kind of sounds like a B-flat chord, even without the bass note. Remember that oftentimes you're going to have a bass player doing a kind of a bass line. And you can just play that and it's going to be cool. Often it's going to sound cooler than going... You can have... It's just as good, if not better often. So, you know, it's a really important thing to get that just through these 2 notes, you can play a B-flat 7 chord. You don't need the root note. I'm just doing that with the thumb just so you hear the B-flat. Normally you just play those 2 notes and that'll be fine. Now the other really cool thing about this trick is that if we move these 2 notes down 1 semitone, 1 fret, and put the bass note on E-flat, we end up with an E-flat 7. Hopefully you remember this kind of E-flat 7 voicing, so it's those 2. Now just look at this as a quick change. Here's... You can hear there's B-flat, E-flat. You can see it's representing the whole chord changes just by playing these 2 notes, and that's really cool. Now the other kind of interesting bit is there was our E-flat. Now of course F is 2 frets higher than E-flat, which is our same shape that we had for B-flat but moved up 1. We've got F. There's E-flat. There's B-flat. F. So we just play through a whole 12-bar blues. You'll hear this with the backing track again later on in the video as well, but I'm hoping that you'll be able to hear all of those chord changes even without the bass note. So just get it in your head there. That's the sound. Now here we go. 2, 3, 4. Got that whole 12-bar blues just by playing one little shape, moving it down a fret for the 4 chord, back to the 1 chord, up a fret to get to the 5 chord, back 2 frets to the 4 chord, back to the kind of central place if you like for the 1 chord, up 1 for the 5 chord, and so it goes. Now it's a really cool trick. It's definitely one that you can kind of play around with quite a lot. Interestingly, the same kind of grips work if we look at a 5th string root. So this was looking at a B-flat chord. If we go right up the neck and look at another B-flat chord up here, we'd of course have to use the 5th string root shape, which would be this. Move it down 1. There's the E-flat chord, the 4 chord. Back up and we're on the B flat. Back down, there's the 4 chord. There's the B flat, then up 1, there's the F, E flat, B flat, F. So the shape works exactly the same. If we start here, as long as we start with the right kind of 3rd and the 7th of the 1 chord, moving it back 1 fret gets to the 4 chord, back to the 1, moving it up 1 fret takes us to the 5 chord. It is a very, very cool little trick indeed for just 2 notes. Now back down here there's another way of playing this which is really, really common, and that is to include the bass note as well. So often you don't want to play completely without the bass note. Doing the 2-note thing is fine, but often you want to play with the 3 notes, including the bass note. And one of the coolest fingerings that you can use if you're going to do that is to use the 2nd and 4th fingers on the flat 7th and the 3rd, that little 2-note thing that we've been talking about, and use the 1st finger on the thicker string for the 6th string root. And then when you drop it down again to go to the 4 chord, 3rd finger reaches over to play the root note. There's the 1 chord, 4 chord, 1 chord. Skipping a little bit of the 12-bar blues to the end, and we've got the 5 chord, 4, 1, 5. This often gets used in kind of jazz things like as well. You can do all sorts of kind of clever things with it later on, so it's definitely worth checking this out as a little grip here. 2nd and 4th fingers on the 3rd and 7th, and the 1st finger playing the root note. That would be the one. I know it feels a little bit cramped, but once you start getting used to the idea of moving it around, there's all sorts of clever little things to do. So try and get used to that one. One little other trick I'll show you actually while we're on here that I think is kind of cool is using the sus4. If you use your little finger and move it forward, you get a 7 sus4, which moves real nice. If you have here the 1 chord, 4 chord, 1, sus, 1. You can see you can just use it as an extension. Good fun times. Now there's one other little thing I'm going to show you here which I reckon is really cool, which is a climb up. Now some of you will remember when we were looking at the different chord sequence variations, there was this little thing that you could do to get up to the 4 chord. Well, there's a really cool one of those that you can use using this little 3-note kind of idea, which is this. It's just a really, I think it's a pretty happening little kind of sequence really. So what we're doing here, we're starting off with that kind of fingering I mentioned before. 1st finger playing the root note, 2nd finger playing the flat 7, and a little finger over on the 3rd. So that'd be 6, nothing, 6, 7. Now the 2nd chord in our movement is little finger moves up, 3rd finger goes over onto the thickest string in the same fret, so they're both on the 8th fret, and 1st finger is going onto the 6th fret of the 4th string. It's probably the hardest movement in here really, but you've got that little finger anchor, then you move little finger and 3rd finger up 1, 2nd finger goes down 1 fret behind them, so it's going to be 9, nothing, 8, 9. Then little finger and 3rd finger move up again, and 1st finger goes down where 2nd finger was. I'll do that really slow. And one more time. Now you can either strum just those 4 strings, just then I just use pick and fingers, because you'll find in this voicing the 1st finger is probably muting that 5th string. On this one, the 3rd finger is laying over to mute the 5th string, 3rd finger is still doing all of the mutes there. If if you're doing sort of strumming, you need to make sure that these thinner strings, I've got a really horrible major seventh note there with my first finger. You want to make sure that you're not doing that if you're strumming all of the strings. If you're doing that kind of strummy sort of idea. Because this gets used, you know, you can use it in that kind of context as well, within a kind of a chunker blues. It doesn't have to be just with these little... Now, interestingly, once you got there, if you wanted to, you could always go for another run of them. It's getting a little bit up the dusty end there, really, for that one, but it's possible. So you could have from B flat, then start the same thing on E flat. Then you're probably going to have to jump right back down the neck. So it's just a kind of a funky little trick there that I figured, seeing as we're looking at these little grips, I'd give you that bit of extra something to check out as well. Probably the biggest deal when you're looking at these little mini grips is making sure that you stay aware of where the root note is all the time. That is really, really, really important. Otherwise, they kind of won't make sense and they won't work for you properly. So that's the most important thing. Each time when you're doing those, even though you're not playing the root note, you really know where it is. After a little while, you'll just kind of know. You won't have to think about it. But to start off with, definitely be kind of focusing and sometimes looking with your eye at the root note, even though there's not a finger on it, just to really kind of make sure that your mind is 100% certain that that's where the root note is, even if I'm playing some other stuff. It's a big deal, that one. So have a play about with that. Just start off with the two note thing and get really comfy with that. It really is a very, very, very useful trick. Often if you're doing kind of this chunker there, that sort of thing for a long time, you're doing a whole show of it kind of thing, it gets pretty hard work. So it can be really nice to have a little break as well and get into doing some of these little two note mini grips as a way of kind of giving your hands a bit of a rest. Otherwise you find that muscle in between your thumb and your first finger will actually absolutely be killing. The backing track today is in the key of B flat. It's kind of a jazzy flavoured thing. So the big deal here is making sure that you use your little dyads. So if I was you, I'd start off with those, making sure that you know where the root note is, of course, all the time, and work your way through as if you were playing with a 6th string root, and then all of the way up the neck as if you were playing with a 5th string root. And then a really good thing to do is to mix in some of your other regular chords. So be playing a bit of big chords for a while and then jump into the little two note thing for one chorus, and then back to doing the big chords or the chunker or whatever it is that you happen to fancy doing. You know, that would be a good way to approach it. And of course, remember that you can use all of the backing tracks from previous weeks as well, and go back and try and use these little dyads, dyad being two note chords or mini grips, whatever you want to call them. Try and use those in all of the different keys as well. That's the key to this stuff, is to play them. If you just think about them lots and know them, that's kind of cool, but it's not going to happen in your playing. You've got to play your way in. So just loads of practice is what you're after. I'll play you out with the backing track just to make sure that you're cool with how it's going to work, and I'll see you for another lesson very soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.